You can hear me okay?
Yep,
Should ask that before I push record.
that's all good.
Regardless, welcome to Hunter and David's 2023 Olympia predictions and questions. Hunter, dude, what's been up? It's been months since we've seen you on the channel. How you been, dude?
I'm good, man. Good. Just like we were chatting before, I just got moved back to Columbus, started a new job. Training's been going well. Just been staying really busy. That's about
Good.
it, man.
Yeah, so like shortly after our Arnold predictions, I was down in near the Nashville area. So I went and trained with you at Redcon 1, which was fun.
hmm
P.S. Fuck the Redcon 1 staff for not letting me piss when I first got there. I had to piss so bad, bro. Went like 4 hours without peeing. That was crazy. Great lift though. And it was a cool spot down there. So it was dope to link up with you. And yeah, man, what's where you been training? I saw you've been at a couple gyms in the Columbus area. So what's that situation looking like?
Yeah, so during the week, I'm training at Metro Fitness Worthington, just right across the street here from where I'm at. And then on the weekends, I'm at Spark Society just because it's like 5 minutes from my apartment, so it's nice. But
Nice.
get a little bit of change of atmosphere throughout the week, so
Definitely.
keeps it interesting.
Dude, and the fact that you're at Metro Worthington, at least with my experience at that gym, is going to play in perfectly to a question that I got. So looking forward to getting to that. But yeah, man, just in general, how's your I mean, it's a little bit of a extended off season to put on some size. How you feeling like you're progressing with it for the goals?
Pretty good. I actually just started another push probably 3 weeks ago. I'm up 8.5 pounds in 3 weeks, so pretty happy with that. And just gonna kind of slowly ramp back up, and we'll
Our
see where it
boy's
goes.
getting big. I love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm thinking hopefully by the end of this should be sitting somewhere around like 230.
Damn. How much you weigh right now?
Morning weight is right around like 205, and then right before bed like 208.
My man's getting huge. Let's go. What's the split looking
Yeah.
like?
Just a normal bro split.
Yeah,
Just
dude.
chest, back, off, arms, shoulders, off, and then legs.
Nice. Got you. Got you. Hell yeah. But we have some very well, exciting and it's very tough predictions ahead. So, I mean, I feel like we
Yeah.
should just hit on this Olympia. Last year, Hunter and I, we went out to Las Vegas for the Olympia. It was really dope. It was a fun trip. Got to hit some great gyms, see some cool things. Um, the Olympia is in Orlando this year. Do you have any plans of
hmm
going?
No, no. It's funny
Yeah.
you mentioned that. I actually just got an email from the hotel that we were staying at last year.
Yeah,
They're like,
yeah.
"We missed you."
Right? I bet you do. Dude, that was a fun weekend. I'd be definitely down. I mean, I could probably pass on Orlando, but I think like in the
Yeah.
foreseeable future, the Olympia is going to be back in Las Vegas. And Vegas, it has its pros and cons. I get that. Probably like what they were saying was like it's a little harder to get around in Vegas, which definitely feel that. I remember I had to cancel that fucking Uber because like we kept on going to the wrong pickup or they didn't understand where we
Uh,
were. So it's definitely like a legit venue though. And I don't know if Orlando necessarily has that same feel to it because you just feel like you're in like the environment during the Olympia in Vegas.
yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do like the expo and stuff. Like I don't know what the whole setup is like. And plus, when you're in Vegas too, it's like if you're not at the show, there's always something to do. Like
Yeah,
and you can walk to it. Whereas like in Orlando, like I mean Disney, but I
right.
mean you can only do that so much before it's like
Dude.
okay,
And like Disney's fucking expensive, bro. Like maybe
hmm
I go maybe one day, but like to go multiple days, you're looking
oh
at
yeah,
yeah, you're looking at a stack. So yeah, hopefully in the future we can go get back out there because like it was, we Ohio boys grew up with the Arnold, but it was really cool to see the other side, how they do it more out west, and see some different people. different things, some cool and funny conversations along the way. I remember you and I just somehow like cut the fucking entire line at the hostile booth. No one said shit though. Like we were like, oh yeah, we weren't even trying to be dicks. We just cut it on accident. Like you don't know where to walk necessarily. You got to talk with Fuad
Yeah.
and Justin and Nick. That was cool.
Yeah, well, we like walked up and they're like, "Oh, we're selling t-shirts over here." And that booth was like on the left, and then it was like, "Well, I'm already here. I'm just gonna turn
Yeah.
and start
Honestly,
talking to them."
the design of like the flow of that booth probably could have been a bit better, but hey, it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Um, dude, can you think of any like big, memorable? Obviously, there's a couple, but what comes to your mind when you think of differences between 2022 and 2023 Olympia?
I mean, a lot of people are missing from this Olympia.
A lot of people.
Um, I mean, just off the
Let's
top of
cover
my
that real
head,
quick.
you got Big Ramy, Ian, um, Brett, Baruz, Nathan. I mean, there's just five guys who potentially would be in the top 10. So
Yeah.
that's new slots for everybody. Um, I don't know. I feel like, and I know a lot of people have said it, but it feels like a bit of a changing of the guard. Like there's not really somebody who's been in that top five for like a long period of time, other than maybe like Brandon. But even this year, like we don't know, is he going to be in the top five again, or like we don't know because
Mm.
there's not like a William Bonnick, there's not like a Phil Heath or somebody like that. No Dexter Jackson, so it's going to be different for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is a changing of the guard. And man, I just feel like even though last year's Olympia was pretty tough to to get some picks, this one was even more challenging. Just because there are so many different like let's say third and fourth or like seventh and eighth that could go slightly different ways. So it will be truly interesting to see. And man, like the fact that we had so many withdrawals and retirements, it really kind of threw a wrench in my original vision. Um, but I think one thing I really want to talk about before we get into the actual picks is, and I don't know, did you watch the most recent Bro Chat episode
I
where,
think so. Yeah,
yeah, there essentially it was kind of a clickbait title where it's like this argument ended Bro Chat. Did you
yeah,
see
I
that?
did see that.
So essentially, for those who didn't see that podcast, Fuad and Ian got into a big debate as to whether the judging criteria has changed. And to my understanding, Fuad has said it has changed because back in the early 2000s, we had the Mass Monster era where it was kind of acceptable to have some distended stomachs, wittable pretty much. You could probably be the best physique on earth, but if you're pushing enough substances and eating enough and getting huge enough, your stomach is going to be a bit distended. And then Ian's take was it hasn't changed. It's just kind of been what's in front of the judges. So I think that's a pertinent thing this year because we could potentially see a pretty big shift based off of that if that assumption is true. So what are your thoughts? Do you think that the criteria has changed recently?
I don't know necessarily that the criteria's changed. I just think they're more so cracking down on as long as your stomach is not distended, then it's not an issue. Now, obviously, like the best physiques are always going to win, and the best physiques typically happen to be just a little bit prettier. But if you look at somebody like Nick, who genetically doesn't have the smallest waist, his gut's not like sticking out. Like it's not an issue. It's just that his shoulders are wide as shit and his waist happens to be a little bit wider.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like if you look at somebody like Andrew, his waist is like that big, and then obviously his shoulders are like that wide. So I don't necessarily think it's that they're looking for the guy with the smallest waist because a lot of the times the guys with the smallest waist just don't have enough muscle to compete. Um, but I do think it's something where they're just it's like even if there's a slight hint of like a distension, it's like sorry, you gotta fix that. Like we're not gonna reward that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think I think personally that the judging criteria has changed. It's kind of like the chicken or the egg conversation, I guess. But to me, and it was like a whole decade of like the stomachs, and then I don't necessarily know who changed that, but and to me, once the judges started kind of cracking down on that look, then the physiques adapted to fit the expectation. So yeah, I didn't really agree with Ian's argument there, even though like there's a slim chance that he could be right, but yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I will say though is regardless of that, for the most part, if you look across the board, as long as they're in shape, typically bigger guys are still winning the shows. That's the thing is like even if you want to make the debate like oh they're going more towards like a prettier look and like I know they were talking about like the Arnold with Samson like he's 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Like he's still the biggest guy on stage. And Nick was a bit downsized at that Arnold. It wasn't like he was, full as a house like we saw him at the Olympia last year. So I think, both things can kind of be true that they are going for a little bit smaller waist, but it's like if you're not big enough, then it doesn't matter anyways.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Do you think that there's big judging criteria differences between the Arnold and the Olympia?
I I'm not 100% sure. I mean, if you ask them, I'm sure they'll say like, "Oh, the Olympia is a big man show," and then because Arnold, obviously classic bodybuilder, has like a little bit of say in it, I'm sure he probably gives him a little nudge to go more towards the classic side of things. But I mean, even Nick's already won an Olympia, and he's not the most, or not an Olympia, an Arnold, and he's not the most aesthetic classic dude. Um, Same thing with like Kai Green a couple years ago. But then also you can make the argument at the Olympia when Brandon won it, he probably wasn't the biggest guy. So
Yeah.
it kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, who fucking knows is the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Tyler Mannion, I guess. He probably
Yeah,
does.
exactly.
All right, man. So you want to start with our top 10. Do you want to start with 10 or start with 1?
um, let's start with shit. Let's start with 10.
That's what I was thinking too. You want to go
Okay.
first or would you like me to?
Let's go back and forth one at a time.
Got you. All right. You want me to start it then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of a dreamer pick because I'm a big fan, but I think it's possible. Who do you think I'm about to say?
Justin.
Yeah. Everybody loves Justin Shire. Dude had a killer debut at Chicago. Is it likely that he places top 10 in his first Olympia? I would say probably not extremely likely, but I think there's a chance because, man, the guy has just a great physique. He's not the biggest, but a very, very pretty physique. So I'm hoping to see, and this is my only emotional pick, I promise. I'm hoping to see Justin Shire in 10th.
So, a couple things we got to get out of the way first. Uh, since we're not covering classic, I just want to say Chris is going to win another one. Nobody needs to worry about that.
Right.
Uh,
But okay, hold on.
Secondly,
Where do you think Terrence, real quick before we get into it, where do you think Terrence is going to place?
I think he'll end up back in the top five, but I don't know where.
Yeah, I'm thinking like him and Urge will have a good battle.
Yeah, I'd say right around that third to fourth spot. I don't think he beats Ramon or Chris, obviously.
No, I agree. Yeah. Back to
Yeah. So I'm with you on this. This is one thing that I've been looking at this list and I'm like, are my picks too emotional? I've honestly been thinking about that. But Justin is my number 10 spot as well. He's so different from everybody else, and I think that's a big part for him is he just stands out because he just looks so much different.
yeah. Yeah, really his arms and his lats are what really catches my eye. Just
Hmm.
fucking massive. And then yeah, I mean a good waist, definitely needs to bring up some size, but everybody knows that. So I feel like it'd be an awesome 10th place spot. And, like we said, with all of these people that dropped out, there's really a slight case for him to be 10th as well. Like we had so
Hmm.
many guys that were gunning for that 10th spot out of the conversation now. So, which will be very, very interesting. Do you think Nathan is going to make it in?
No, I just saw a report yesterday that he's not. He got to Orlando and then immigration sent him back to the UK.
Right, right. So he's going to appeal that, but it's getting real close. So I don't know if they're going to be able to work through an appeal in time. But yeah, that would fucking suck to go all the way to Orlando and then have to go back. I'd be pissed. So who knows?
Yeah,
Probably not.
yeah,
Which was also funny because Nick Strength and Power was saying that the whole time, and then Nathan was like, "Fuck Nick Strength and Power," and all these people talking shit. And yeah, you're
yeah,
not in the States, bro. So that's a tough look.
yeah.
Ready to move on to number 9?
Yes,
I
sir.
have in ninth place Tonio, the Predator, Antonio Burton in ninth. And I'm thinking, man, definitely once again, similar to Justin, the battle between Justin and Tonio is going to be a good one. But gosh, Tonio is just freaky. I think he definitely clears that top 10 just because, man, that physique is gnarly. Not the biggest physique, but it is a good one at that. And I think he got maybe 2 wins or a win and a top 2. I can't remember how
Hmm.
many shows he did. He did a couple, but he had a really good season. He's had a long time between his qualification and this Olympia. I want to say that was one of the earlier ones in like April or May. So a good 5-ish months. And I think that he's ready to bring it. So what do you think for 9?
I swear to God, you hacked my computer because I have him at 9 too.
Yeah. There's especially, man, like I wouldn't have had that a week ago, but especially with all these notifications that we've got that people aren't going to be in. I think those are a very easy top 9 and 10.
Yeah, and I think the reason he's ahead of Justin too is I just think his back is so much better.
Yep.
I know that's one thing Justin's still working on. Um,
Back in
but I
mid
think
section.
yeah, I think he's working with one of the Camp Jansen dudes. So he should be peeled.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard about who he's working with, but yeah, I think so he lost to, oh, what was the other one? I want to say he lost to Ross. I want to say.
Yeah, that was Cali Pro.
Yeah, yeah. And that's when Ross was just crazy conditioned. So yeah, if he can bring up his conditioning to beat something like that, like he's gonna be in that top 10 for sure. Moving
Hmm.
along to 8. This is where it gets truly hard, people. So if in 2 or 3 weeks when we're coming back to this, you think, wow, you're a dumbass. This is where it gets hard. So
Hmm.
I have maybe a unsubstantiated, but a hunch that Michael Krizo will be in 8th place. And I think, last year was a strong first showing for him. And his qualification, I don't think there was much contention there. So I think he's gonna be in that, doing pretty well in the second call out. Second call out, right?
Yeah,
10 or something, 6 through 10. So
yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good that he can be in that 8th spot. But then it just, the talent level and the quality of physique from 7 on down is drastically different. But I'm interested to hear your 8th.
So he's 8 for me as well.
We were pretty
He's 8
close
for me as
last year,
well.
but this is surprising to me.
Yeah, especially because we haven't talked about it at all.
Nope.
Um,
All we've
but
said
he's 8 for
was,
me as
damn,
well.
this is hard.
Yeah, and I think other than Samson, he might be the biggest guy at the Olympia this year.
Yeah.
But he's always kind of had issues for some reason with his tan, and it always looks a little off. So his color's always kind of been an issue. And even though he's really good, I don't think he's quite up to snuff just genetically as some of the guys that are going to be ahead of him. So
Yeah. Yeah, he does have a little bit of a different structure. It definitely lends itself to being just massive and
yeah,
overall big, which is important for bodybuilding, but there are other elements to be considered as well. might not necessarily have like the best flow and symmetry. But yeah, in terms of size, I feel like that's enough to get him into that top 10.
Absolutely.
All righty, here's where it gets tough, people. So in seventh place, after a lot of deliberation, I have Andrew Jacked. Who
Oh
you
wow. So in seventh, I have Brandon, and I'm probably gonna take some flack for this, but I saw that picture. I think it was him and Terrence side by side, and you could make an argument that Terrence's legs were bigger than his.
Yeah,
And Terrence is like 175 pounds on stage,
yeah,
so not a big dude. So that kind of concerned me. Um, and I don't know. I think this year is going to be a make or break year for Brandon.
right. Yeah, I remember that picture you were talking about. I think my main concern with that was the conditioning at that point. Um, you know, I'd like to think that Brandon can get it within the time. I think that was about 5 weeks out when he was taking that picture with Terrence. I want to say, I might be wrong, something like that. So I'm hoping that Brandon can rein that in a little bit. But I'm thinking Andrew for seventh because man, he went back and forth with Hunter Labrada. I think the issue, correct me if I'm wrong, when he lost, he did he do two shows or one show with Hunter?
This year he did one.
Right. And that was pretty debatable whether Hunter or Andrew won. Um, I think Hunter still has Andrew on conditioning. So that's why I have Andrew in the seventh. The dude is just crazy. Like, that's a crazy physique. If they can dial it in this year, I'll be very impressed, but I don't think it's quite going to happen because he could jump like 4 or 5 places easily if he comes in super crisp. I don't
Hmm.
know. First year with some new coaches, I think those things take time. But he did have an impressive showing last year, impressive showing at the Arnold, and I think that there's a lot of good things ahead for him. However, this year I'm gonna put him at seven.
Okay.
Sixth place. That means Hunter Labrada. Who you got for sixth?
I have Hunter as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like there's not a whole bunch to say with Hunter. Like this was a great year for him in terms of coming back better. Um,
Hmm.
I want to say he placed like seventh last year.
Yeah.
And that was a big drop from the like third or fourth that he had in 2021. So I
Hmm.
think Hunter showed a lot of resiliency. So shout out to Hunter, but also just had some great conditioning. Like he looked phenomenal up there on stage. He had two shows where, you know, he looked probably as good as he could have. And he won
Right.
one of them and then got second to Andrew in the other. So very good competitive season for Hunter, made the improvements he had to make. And I think overall, he's going to give everybody a good run, but he'll be more middle of the pack for this top 10.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think he and Ben, because he's still working with Ben, I believe, have figured out his condition. And then I think moving forward after that, it's just going to be continuing to bring up his back. I mean, it's gotten better for sure, but once you get into that like top five, top six, that's when it starts getting a little bit more, you know, you can't just be missing a full body part like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think, maybe last year Hunter was going through some personal issues, some things went out, and I'm sure we'll never know the full details because it doesn't really matter. But it seems like some of that got resolved, and that's just
Yeah.
enabled him to have a much more clear headspace to devote his mental energy and physical energy towards training, get everything locked in, improving the nutrition where it needed improved. Which was a big thing. I think like in the past he was doing a lot of like shakes and liquid diet, and now he switched that up to be more conventional. Who knows why he did that? But yeah, sixth place. So we are 100% accurate except for our seventh.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
for fifth, I have Brandon Curry. What you got for fifth?
For fifth, I have Andrew.
Yeah, so those flip flop. That's what I was thinking would happen. Yeah,
Hmm.
that'll be a great. I hope they get a comparison, Andrew and Brandon, because I think Brandon's going to be able to rein in that conditioning a little bit. I maybe I just didn't notice the legs thing, but in general, I think Brandon, this if I'm really hoping he gets top 5 potentially for his last Olympia. I think this one, if it doesn't go his way, could be his last. I just have that thought in my
Yeah.
head. I don't know, but
Yeah, I think he might be in his 40s,
yeah,
I
he's
think.
like 42, 43.
Yeah. Yeah, I have Andrew there just because I think he's a freak. He's like 6'2", but he's just built like a Greek god basically. And he's working with Chris Aceto this year. And so my coach Dusty, when he was competing, he also worked with Chris Aceto. And I guess they were talking and they were like, "Oh, like how do you think he's going to place this year?" And Chris Aceto was like, "Oh, he's going to win." Like confidently, he was like, "He's going to win." I'm like,
Christina doesn't
"That's
really bullshit too much.
right, right." So that's why I'm like, okay, like I think he's going to win? No, but I mean, that's some high praise.
Definitely. Yeah, I remember last year the kind of overall sentiment was that Andrew was huge. He looked insane backstage, but then like come show day, I think the conditioning was an issue. Yeah, he's definitely had seemingly better guidance this year. So I'm very, very interested to see how it'll pan out. Cause like you said, like he could really win if he brings the perfect version of himself. I don't know if that's coming this year. I think he's got a couple more years to nail that down though.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, hopefully for me, I would love to see Brandon, come out and cap that career off with something impressive. Um, who's to say he's going to retire? We don't really know. They say
Right.
black don't crack, baby. He could be going for years and years. We got Kamal, who's like 52 or some shit, still
Yeah,
qualifying.
that's ridiculous.
So I don't know, man. So we have our flip flopped me, Brandon at 5th, and then Hunter with Andrew at 5th. Our 5th and 7th flip flop. But for 4th, as we mentioned, Black Don't Crack, Samson. That's who I have for 4th, bro. Who you have?
I have Hottie.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, I have him dropping down
Actually,
to
I
fourth.
I can definitely see that, especially because he posted yesterday after I made this list.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, I
tell me your
haven't seen that
thoughts.
post. Yeah, I haven't seen that post yet, but I don't think there's going to be anything wrong with Hottie, but I just think everybody else is getting so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Like you look at somebody like Derek, you look at somebody like Samson, like Nick. I just feel like they're just progressing all the time. Whereas I feel like Hottie is just like maybe getting a little bit better, but nothing that we're gonna look and be like, oh shit, like this is way different from last year. So I just think even if the judges aren't thinking about it that way, like subconsciously, I feel like that clicks in their head. Like, wow, Nick looks different. Wow, Samson looks different. Whoever it is. Whereas, like when they see Hottie, they're like, we've seen this before. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, it would be very hard for Hottie to make some improvements. I have Simpson in 4th because I think that Nick is going to come in with more significant improvements because to me, it's really between those two guys. Um, I could be wrong. Samson's definitely put on size, man. So this is why it's just really hard to tell, and it's really anyone's guess. There's really no way right now. We're what, um, 10 days out or so, 11.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's really no way to say like, oh, like this peak isn't going well, or like, oh, I'm concerned. I will say, because I brought it up in Hottie's post yesterday, I thought the midsection wasn't as crispy as it has been. That being said, he's posted other updates where his like obliques and serratus anterior looked absolutely shredded. So hard to say.
Right.
I wasn't necessarily blown away with Hottie's post yesterday, which is that's definitely a testament to what you said, where it's like, man, we've kind of seen this before, and love it or hate it, the judges are looking for changes. They're looking for improvement. And damn, like Hottie came in really good in 2022. So for him to do that, it's definitely possible, but probably not as likely as other guys.
hmm And you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but when you look at Hadi, does he seem like he just doesn't have like any standout like body part? Like everything across the board is like really good, but it's not like a Nick or a Samson where like their arms are gigantic or their legs are gigantic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I would say like looking at him, I always think his legs are just massive, but like mostly his most known attribute is his conditioning. So
Exactly.
yeah, that one can play in your favor or against you as well, whether you do or don't have a standout body part. So I see what you're saying there. But so fourth on my end, I'm saying Samson, and for Hunter, it's Hottie. Moving on into third, you go first this time. I've been going first the whole time.
All right, I got you. So I got Derek. I know, I know. um, I think he's going to be better than last year, but I think his condition might take a little bit of a hit. I think he's obviously still putting on new muscle, so that's always, difficult. But last year, the big knock on him was his chest wasn't very full, and then his legs, even though they're good sized legs, they're not the biggest legs. So I think, and I mean, obviously his coach is Hani, so I'm sure he'll figure it out. But I could see them potentially coming in a little bit too full just to make sure that those body parts look bigger than they did last year. And then in the end, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be off by any means, but just a little bit less, conditioned than he was last year.
Yeah. So if you were Derek's coach and you had to miss on one end, would you rather err on the side of more conditioning or more size?
I would err on the side of more condition just because last year he did that. Excuse me. And I think it played in his favor. And you have to figure if he's put on new muscle from last year, he's at least going to be a little bigger in those areas. So it's not like, you know, it's not like they're going to shrink his legs to smaller than it was last year. If anything, they'll be about the same size, if not a little bit bigger. But, it's kind of a head game sometimes because, like, well, shit, last year they said legs weren't big enough. So this year, like, we're going to come in full of shit. Like, so we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like knowing Hottie, he might err on the side of more conditioning just because that is kind of like the trademark for his athletes. But it's, of
Right.
course, case dependent. My third place, I have Nick Walker in third. And I think, man, Nick has made some crazy improvements. And I think a lot of people are overlooking Nick. I don't know if you've got that feeling, but he's not as talked about. But if you look at him, he's definitely better than he was last year. He's definitely better than he was at the Arnold. Only what? It'll be about 8 months between the two or so.
hmm
So those improvements, I think, are going to be noticed. I think he hasn't really posted many progress photos as of lately, but like a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, he looked like his conditioning was getting there. You see his face in videos lately. He's got the Nick Walker death face. So I think
hmm
conditioning is going to be there. He's added size. I think he's been doing big things, man. And I really hope that that's rewarded. That's why I think it's a third place spot locked in for Nick.
Okay. Yeah. Number two, I have Samson.
Mm-hmm.
I just think he's so damn big, so pretty. Like, I don't think he'll be quite as sharp as Derek. I think he'll be close because I think he and Milos are like slowly starting to figure it out. Um, but I mean, when you stand Derek next to Samson, I mean, Derek's like 5'6".
Yeah,
Samson's, 6 foot, 300 pounds on stage.
right.
And obviously, like, that shouldn't be like what we're thinking about. We're taking the body as a whole. But when you look at it, like, your eye goes to one. And if there's a dude who's, 6 inches and 60 or whatever pounds bigger than the other guy, like, it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, it was like Rami versus he won the 212.
Clarita,
Yeah, Sean Clarita.
Clarita. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, man, maybe Sean looked like a more complete physique, but there is the element of size and that. overall structure and height and weight just does influence things. So that's a good point, man. The Samson and Derek comparisons will be crazy. This fucking bug, dude. Do you see this motherfucker just flying around my camera? He's real close, too. God. Yeah.
I've seen him once or twice.
This guy, man, tell you what, trying to ruin the podcast. Yeah, dude. So that could really go either way. Those are some solid picks. So then that means, do you have Nick winning?
I do.
Yeah,
I
but
do.
we skipped my second, right? So I think Hottie's going to be back in second, because they always say, and once again, who knows if this is true, but it takes a lot to knock off the champ, and I do think it's going to take a lot to knock off Hottie. It's a very, there's so many little like superstitions and things in bodybuilding where it's like, oh, it takes a lot to knock off the champ, but you're supposed to see improvements. So it's like, who really knows? And that's the tough part. But I think, man, Hottie just, I don't think he's lost too much from last year. I really don't. Maybe a little bit, if not very similar. So that's why I think he's just going to slip a tiny bit to Derek being in first. So we have Derek versus Nick as our first places, huh? What's your thoughts on Nick at first?
So I saw a side by side of him from a couple weeks ago, and it was like 5 weeks or four, I don't remember what it was, but I think it was 5 weeks out of the Olympia versus like 1 week out of the Arnold, and it was like night and day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about him and like what his weight was like 5 weeks out of the Olympia, and he was like 275 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not tall. Like you've been around him, he's like 5'7". And then I'm pretty sure at the Arnold this year, he was like 248 pounds or something like that. So if he's walking around at that condition at 275 pounds at 5'7", 5 weeks out, I mean, realistically, how much more is he going to come down? 15 pounds? Like
Yeah.
15, 20 maybe?
I could see him on
So
I could see him on stage at like 265.
yeah, like, yeah, I think at very, very lightest, maybe 250 something, like 256, 257. But that's huge at that height. And then I also, when I look at Nick, like when you look at Samson and you look at Nick, like obviously your eyes are drawn to Samson because he's, pretty and big and whatnot. But then when you go shot for shot, that's when I think Nick starts to expose people. Front double, he's not going to lose to anybody necessarily. Like his arms are probably the biggest in the show. I think he compares well with Derek. Obviously, he doesn't have the waist that Derek has, but arms, it just stands out. You want to go back double. I know everybody says that Derek's got the best back double. Honestly, I think Nick does. I think it's nasty. I think his hamstrings are ridiculous. You want to go side tricep. I think Nick has that shot. You want to go side chest. I think he has that one as well. Front lat, obviously, not a good shot for him. Most muscular, great shot for him. So it's just like when you go down the line of the poses, I'm like, well, shit, like there's not too many that he's, if he's not first, he's second. Like it's very close on that.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I mean, I'll be interested to see that back double because I think Derek's back double is fucking crazy. So that will probably be honestly like the deciding factor. That and the most muscular.
Yeah, I think Derek's back double might be a little bit wider and it might be a little bit prettier because it like cinches down into that waist. But I think Nick's back double is just so like nasty, and then his hamstrings look like they got taken off like a cow. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, dude. I think that's it's honestly a testament to the discussion that I opened the podcast with is has the judging criteria changed?
Mm.
And that's the thing, man. I guess this year will probably tell us because to me, it's Derek because the judging criteria has changed to be more pretty. Is that true? Who knows? But that's my
Mm.
main thing is like the dude is just massive and he's got aesthetics too, which typically
Right.
don't go quite as hand in hand as they do. Um, yeah, in terms of Nick's flaws, I really don't think he has many flaws other than what you've mentioned. Um,
Right.
so yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I would love to see Nick win because I'm also a huge fan of Nick, but
I know it was a little bit of an emotional pick for me as well.
yeah. Yeah. Nick's been getting a lot of shit kind of unnecessarily, like just the way people talk about him. And I mean, honestly, I feel like, to be honest, Fuad is kind of a petty motherfucker from the way he talks about his former athletes. It's just the and the way that they say things that I think, once again, you could never possibly know. But like a lot of times people will just ask like, "Oh, is there drama between X and Y?" And it's like, no, of course there's not. But you hear people say one thing and another person say another thing, and you're like, I wonder if these are connected.
Yeah, it's
We'll
so
just never
funny to
know.
me because it's like they do make such a big spectacle out of it, and I'm like, it's just business. Like
Yeah,
it's like if you go to another company, like you don't continue to talk about the company that you were just working for, or at least like you shouldn't, unless it
yeah.
was like, damn, they did some crazy shit. Like,
Nick made a funny comment on, maybe it was like do you watch the Pure HD podcast?
yeah, yeah,
He was like, yeah, they don't expect me to stand around all day the day of the Olympia. I was like, yep,
shots fired.
right. One time Justin said on that podcast, he was like, yeah, fuck you, Fuad. He literally said that. I was like, oh shit. Because Fuad was like, I don't think he's gonna make top 10 or whatever. But yeah, it's always fun to speculate. But at the end of the day, I'm sure if they were placed in the same room, they could get along. That's what's important.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
solid top 10, a lot of similarities at the beginning, and then some big differences towards those fifth and down. So I'm really interested to see how it goes. Last year, um, we were pretty good, but definitely had some misses because I think everybody did with the big Rami situation. So who knows? Could be another thing like that where somebody just comes in really off. That's what's always interesting about bodybuilding. So, do you have any fun plans to watch the Olympia?
Not yet. I don't know. I forget what they charged last year for the stream, but it was something ridiculous.
$75.
Yeah. And it's like, especially if the quality's not, up to what it should be. But if it's reasonable, I'll definitely do that. But otherwise I'll probably just, you know,
Split it with
keep
somebody. Oh,
yeah,
I wonder if American Barbell would have like a watch party or something.
that'd be
Maybe.
sweet. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it. I'm probably gonna split it with a friend. I'm gonna be visiting a friend that's pretty into it, so I'll be there for the weekend and watch it with him. Definitely will be missing you out at the venue. Like we were really in the action last year, which was cool. So
Yeah.
um yeah, dude. Anything else? Any other sentiments to talk about this Olympia?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all. I'll be a lot happier when it's back in Vegas.
Definitely. I will be too. I'm going to pull up some questions and see what I got because Hunter and I both put out questions on our story. So let's see what we're working with. And one of them already expired. So I'm going to go into my archive real quick. Do you have any good questions for the video?
Depends. Do you want training related or you want what the hell is that?
What the hell is wait, what'd you say? Wait, what
Like, do you want training related ones or do you want ones that are just like, really? Like,
oh,
why are
just
you asking that?
throw it all, bro. We'll fucking do it. We both get enough of these.
All right, here, first one. Will you start an OnlyFans?
What the fuck? Jesus Christ. They have no chill.
No,
So
the better
will you start an
question is,
OnlyFans? Yes
no,
or
I will
no?
not.
Damn.
Um,
Shucks.
but if
Do you
you,
think it was a guy or girl that I thought?
uh, it was probably a dude.
That's how it usually goes. Those dudes be fucking supporting the homies, man. And they'll be like, yeah, I'll buy your page. Hell yeah, bro. Just don't want to know what you're doing with that in your spare time.
No, we'll sell feet pics though.
Yeah. Still my gym socks.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Venmo me.
What you got? What you drinking?
Americano.
There
Too
we
Splenda.
go. Too Splenda, baby. Keeping her lean. I like it. Do you have any other good questions? Because I have one that'll probably take a while to talk about.
Okay. Couple short ones. When do you consider yourself strong? Like, at what point can you consider yourself strong?
Never.
Never. Good answer. I like that.
What about what's your
Um,
thoughts?
what's that?
Like, what are your thoughts? Did you have any like landmark numbers? I mean, I was definitely happy when I squatted fucking 405 and benched 225 and I deadlifted like a shitty gym PR 500, but like, yeah, strength really doesn't matter as much to me anymore. And all those numbers, like once you hit them, you're like, well, ready to deadlift 600 now. So
Right. Yeah, I would say for like a normal person, if you can bench 225, you're in a special category. If you can squat 315, I think you're in a good category. And then deadlift's kind of difficult because it's like if you're not built for that shit, it'll just break you in half. But
yeah,
um, I don't know. I think 405 is a good number for deadlift.
yeah. Yeah, like I feel like regardless, one thing that I think I could do, like regardless, I haven't really deadlifted heavy in years, but I feel like I could, if I really had to, I could go up and sumo pull 405 pretty easily. Like it's
Yeah.
just that ingrained in my body. That was, that's probably my one good strength attribute that I had, just because I am tall as fuck. So use
Yeah.
those numbers. Um, yeah, good question though.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you have any history of using like peptides or anything like that, but somebody asked favorite peptide.
Ah, dude, no. Just use real steroids, you bitch.
Yeah, I've never used
I
any
hate when
peptides
people
before.
ask me about that. Just, I mean, well, there are certain use cases for like getting over injury, but I feel like it's
Yeah,
kind of like for us right now with like still trying to get careers popping off. The shit's expensive. Like,
yeah,
it's just not the right guys to ask for that. But I would
yeah,
say in general, just do real steroids if you are looking for it for the actual like benefits of I want to get bigger and stronger. Shoes test for Christ's fucking sake.
yeah. No, honestly, yeah. I mean, I've heard like good things about like BPC and TB 500, but I don't know. I'm 26, haven't been injured, so I can't really speak on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one client which I've talked to him about this so many times that he knows, and I roast him every time he asks. But he'll ask about different things that he sees on TikTok because that shit's huge on TikTok, man. Like the SARMs and
Hmm.
peptides. I'm like, dude, test,
Yeah,
free time. Like, stop
yeah,
wasting your time if you want to do this.
yeah. I don't think I have a whole lot more on here. Here, this one's kind of a interesting one. When you do rest times, do you do like timed rest times or you just do like whenever you're ready for your next set?
I don't really do timed rest times unless I have like a real tight window. Like if I have under an hour to train and it's kind of like suboptimal at that point, I'll be like, all right, I'll take a minute in between this or like minute and a half. And that just kind of helps keep me on track if my schedule gets messed up, but I do need to get that session in quicker. So in general, what I kind of use is like, is my heart rate down? Do I feel like I could get another productive set? And like mentally, if I like, let's say you do a heavy set of like bent rows and maybe in a minute and a half, your heart rate comes down, but like mentally, you're just like, dude, that fucked me up. Like, there's three things I really consider. So, like, heart rate, am I going to hit the like if I have a target, like let's say 8 to 12 reps, am I going to be able to get within that target again? Or
Right.
and mentally, like, can I approach this set with enough zeal to get it done?
Yeah. I mean, typically I'm not doing more than like two working sets.
Yeah.
So I only have one rest period, if that's what you want to call it. So, I mean, ideally, just as soon as I feel good to go again. But if it's like a crunch time workout, honestly, I'll just back off the weight a little bit and just kind of chase the pump for that day. But that's pretty few and far between.
Yeah. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Good questions. Thank you to Hunter's audience for asking him questions. Maybe I've just exhausted the questions. I try to do them like once a week, and usually I get just stupid questions, kind of like what you got at the beginning. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it goes. Eventually we'll get there. But I have one good question. Shout out to my man Eric. Well, second of all, everybody that follows me on Instagram said they saw me post this. It says, "Please, for the love of God, ask a question," because I was going to jump off the Salesforce Tower, which is the tallest building in downtown Indy. I had one person say, "Do it." So shout out to you. But the question that I really want to discuss comes from Eric, and definitely interested to hear your take on this as well. So I'll just read what he said. And we had a good little back and forth before the podcast. I've asked this question before on my podcast as well. So his statement is, every gym I go to, nonsensical influencer routines seem to be the go-to for the general gym crowd. What changes need to be made from more evidence-based advanced trainers in terms of either presentation or content creation, so the more sensible route when it comes to training becomes mainstream? Any thoughts toward that right off the bat?
Yeah. Stop doing dumbass workouts that like you're like I feel like especially with those content creators, they're just like inventing exercises because it looks cool
You need
and because
content,
it
so you
yeah, because it's
do stupid shit essentially.
yeah, it's like it's something new, it's something you probably haven't tried, you've never seen it before. So you're like, "Oh, that's the new way that I'm gonna grow my back." It's like, no, you might feel it, but it's like you're probably not gonna be able to load it very well. And it's probably just not an overall good exercise for your back. I mean, it's like I don't know, it's like a finisher exercise essentially, but they base their whole workouts around
Yeah.
those.
So you and I have had the discussion, especially at Sparked Society, that there was a lot of bullshit that went on. Now that I'm back in AMF, I see, like a group of mostly around their young 20s, late teens. And so let's think one specific example that you have funny ass examples of stuff from Sparked, but I actually do want to like try to be helpful on this. So like, what is an example of something you've seen from Sparked that we can tell the audience? Because it's very hard, like thinking back, like when you were probably when did you get into lifting? 16, 17, 18?
Yeah, right around 18.
Yeah, so I was 16 and I got roped into some marketing because these people are marketers before actual trainers and like knowledgeable trainees. So what is an example of something that you saw as Sparked where maybe someone had good intentions, but it was just fucking stupid?
I mean, the one that always sticks out to me is that sideways chest press.
Yeah, because
That one's always big.
it does have good mind to muscle connection, right? But it's really lacking in overload capabilities. And also, like, yeah, you're probably not going to get injured, but if you were to fuck around, you could probably fuck yourself up. So
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Continue on.
So I would say that one's a big one. Um, I don't know why this one bothers me, but it does. It's when people do like a dumbbell curl and they hold the other one
Yep. Stupid.
isometrically while they're doing the one. And it's like, just set the arm down. You're just fatiguing that arm. You're not, because you're not getting anything out of that. And you're sure
Yeah.
as shit not focusing on this arm when you're
Yeah.
trying to, like, so stuff like that.
I actually
Um,
saw a kid doing that last week and he was fucking going hard. So like props to you.
mhm.
But in terms of the hierarchy of what's productive for hypertrophy, isometric contractions, while they're not useless, are much less productive than an actual rep. So like you're
Right.
just
And
you're feeling that challenge. And don't get me wrong, he probably felt like he had a pump and he probably felt fucking good after. But physiologically speaking, your muscle cell is not going to respond as well compared to just a regular curl.
yeah, I mean, just like what I call it is you're leaking energy. You're just wasting energy on something that could be way more productive if you just let your arm hang there, didn't do anything with it, did your curls on the one arm, and then switched over to the other. So stuff like that.
I'll give you my example real quick. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've been
go ahead.
seeing this quite a bit. There's a time and place for it, but not, in my opinion, it's not for this demographic of like younger guys, let's say. I have been seeing a fuck ton of kids doing N1 style shit. So not everything from N1 is bad. I'm not trying to say that, but like when you are strictly focusing on isolated movements, like this little tricep extension on a cable, or this single arm lateral raise, or a single arm rear delt fly, like guys, you're fucking 20 years old. Go in there and lift some heavy weight, use some intensity. Like it's the time and place to like I am, you know me, I'm real locked in with my training. I'm maybe a little bit overthinking with it, but like this is the time and place when you're younger. It's like figure that shit out, lift heavy, build your base. You might see Chris Bumstead doing the single arm cable extension, but that's because
Yeah.
he's built his physique on the meat and potatoes type movements. And now, granted, for better or worse, he's a little fucked up. So he can continue to refine weak points with those isolated movements and work around potential injuries or nagging issues that he has. That which goes back to why I like being real control of my shit. So hopefully I never, which you are inevitably going to get injured, but like hopefully I can stave off that as much as possible. It's like a risk reward. I'm leaving some results on the table, but hopefully my longevity is present, which is my thought there. But do you see that with the single arm shit and the cable shit all the time?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's a refining movement. It's when you've already built your base. Like, and now that you just mentioned that, I do see like people setting up these crazy like bench here. I'm gonna sit back here and really make sure I get my squeeze on that. And it's like, yeah, you feel it, but it's the same thing if you just stood there and did just a lat pull down with just your arm. Yeah, you can make your lat feel like it's burning, but
Yeah.
it's not putting anything under load. You're using 15 pounds. Like it's not going anywhere. And my coach always has a really good analogy with that. He's like, you're using a scalpel when you should be using a fucking sledgehammer.
Yep.
It's like if I asked you to go tear down a building, I wouldn't be like, here, use a scalpel. I'd be like, here, go fucking swing as hard as you can and try to knock some shit down. That's
Right.
essentially what you're doing, especially when you're getting started. It's like you don't have any muscle yet. You
Yeah.
don't need to be, being like, oh, well, the nuance of like, I just want my lat to pop out a little bit right here. Like, no, dude, you need a lat first.
Yeah. I think that's what will cause a large amount of people and kids to quit is because they're doing this shit and not going to see the results. They're going to be like, fuck it, it's not worth my time.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's also why, like, when you see, especially with like a lot of the younger generation, you see the older generation looking at us and they're like, oh, they don't train hard. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I just think so many of the younger kids are stuck on those little isolation movements that you don't have to train that hard on those. Like, yes, you're putting in effort, but it's way different if you're doing just a single arm pull down, you get done, you recover pretty quickly. Whereas if I asked you to go do a set of bent over barbell rows and you're slamming through that shit, you're going to need a few minutes until you do the next one. You're not just going to be able to hop right back on.
a very cool interaction that we had at the Olympia together last year. His name is literally, it's escaping me. What's the guy that hosts the podcasts? Like a ton of them. It's just bodybuilding. He does a lot of those. He's talking
Um,
to Dusty and Rob quite a bit.
oh, Scott.
Yes. So Scott talked to Hunter and I, and he said, eventually, one thing that you both are going to encounter inevitably is that you'll have to change your training style to what you don't love. Like you're going to do what you love, and then eventually that shit can catch up to you. I see that for a lot of people. I've been through that like somewhat myself, but I mean, once again, that's kind of why I train the way I do, where it's like, yeah, it's lighter, but utilizing tempo and that type of shit. Um, you had like I saw like Guy's sister Nino, and Nick's been I don't know, Nick's probably getting a little fucking paycheck from RP. and I'm sure Guy is getting some kickback with affiliate codes as well. But Guy's big thing was like, I'm injured, my shoulders are injured, can't really do a lot. But he seemed to enjoy that style of training where you're really controlling eccentrics and really focusing on mind to muscle connection, moving through the range of motion, and a full range of motion, I guess you could say. So I thought that was good. And yeah, like, I guess my point with that is like, shit is going to change. So try to keep longevity in mind too on the other end. Cause I know I made the point of like, lift heavy, get after it, but like, don't be stupid is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and you can put both together. That's the thing, is people think it either needs to be like slow and I squeeze here and I stretch here, or I gotta like throw this weight across the room. Like you can put both together. It doesn't mean that it has to be like super soft. You
Yeah.
just need to be like smart about it. Like
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Like
For sure.
don't be dropping a 3 plate squat into the hole and just like bouncing out of the bottom.
Exactly.
But at the same time, don't be putting just like a 25 on each side and like,
Yeah. Yeah. For
you know,
sure. For sure. So to continue on with Eric's question, his second part was, and this is important to include from how I respond in my thoughts. He's like, my general hope when it comes to fitness influencing is that our generation is going to make somewhat of a dent in helping people our age form good nutrition and fitness habits so that when we're 45 plus, we aren't as deconditioned and unhealthy as our parents' generation is. So I definitely see that, and I hear that. I think everyone can agree with this. And I have asked this question to another person in my podcast, Shimmy, before. And I was like, what's it going to take to get better training out there, better habits for people to follow? And Shimmy thought that it's going to take, at least in the microcosm of bodybuilding, right? Because that's how I thought of this. Eric actually had a good response to that as well. So Shimmy back in 2022, he said it's going to take someone influential like Chris Bumstead to train and eat a little bit better. And I think Chris Bumstead generally, he trains pretty well. Sometimes I see him doing certain things. I'm like, I feel like you could switch that out for something else. Or, he'll do his belt. I don't know if you watch him train ever. I watch his videos from time to time. So like sometimes I think his form is shit on like belt squats. Like if you're trying to target the quads, like that's the way he does it is more so glute dominant. And I don't think you can really argue that. Like obviously he's getting quad stimulus. Don't get me wrong. But Shimmy's response was it'll take someone from the top down to kind of be a little bit more sensible with their training and with their health and their nutrition to make a big change. And I thought Nick Walker doing training with Jared Feather was an example of that. And I think it got a good amount of people on the train of, in my opinion, you don't have to prescribe to everything that RP says or everything that like science-based lifting says. You don't have to do that. But in general, if you're going to dumbbell bench, maybe use the 80s with really good form, really feeling your pecs rather than going with the 120s. That's like my example right now. Like I could probably rep 120 for some shitty ass reps, but if I were to rep 80s with some good form, my chest would be annihilated. So I don't know if you have any thoughts towards that. If you agree, if you think that the top down approach where you're having an influential person do good shit will influence the masses, or if that's not really how you see that panning out.
I think it will, but I think one thing that it's gonna take is like take who's a new kid now? Sam Sulek.
Yeah.
Take him. So you've seen him train, right? Like kind of
Yep.
how he I think part of the and obviously what he's doing is working, so you can't knock it. But I think when somebody sees somebody doing something like that, they're like, "Oh shit, like that's how he got that big. That's how I got to do it."
Yeah.
Whereas like, and even Fuad's talked about it, like, yeah, you could probably be a little safer on this, and you could probably be a little safer on that, but it's working. I feel like when we see somebody like that, that starts from the ground zero that he did,
Yeah.
and then builds himself into something like that while also gaining that stardom that he has, I think that will help a lot more than just somebody who's already at the top starting it, if that makes
True.
sense. Because like if you see it from the beginning of it, progress into whatever it becomes, then it's a lot more like, oh shit, like that's how he started, that's how he got to where he's at. Whereas like a lot of these guys who admittedly they'll be like, yeah, I trained a bit like an asshole when I was younger, and then I've obviously cleaned it up and things are a lot better now. Um, but I do think with the popularity of like RP, um, obviously with Nick and Guy and all those other guys, kind of doing that style, I think that'll help, kind of keep things a little bit cleaner, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So then Eric brought a good point because I want to hit on both sides of this. We have this microcosm of bodybuilding, but really fitness and people that go to the gym are so much more than just bodybuilding. So he says, not to sound like a dick, but at the end of the day, there's a very small portion of Gen Pop that gives two shits about bodybuilding. You can ask any recreational gym goer if they know who Jared Feather or Nick Walker is, and it'll be blank stares. He says the bodybuilding community is so up its own ass with so many different camps, methodologies that it pulls the Gen Pop crowd in so many ways that they can't tell their head from their ass. And they end up making stupid decisions like, hey, I'm going to water fast for 3 straight days. And I'm like, yeah, I hear that. Like, but at the same time, maybe it's not a bodybuilder, but a lot of people get their fitness information from social media, like YouTube or Instagram or TikTok are the 3 biggest educating platforms for the gym. That's how I learned shit. I'm pretty sure that's probably how you picked up on things, right? Like, I don't know who you
Mm-hmm.
followed back in the day, but I think it's going to have to be, I doubt it's ever going to be taught in schools the way it should. Like, obviously,
No.
like your gym teacher that played football in high school and maybe college is gonna take those like old school methodologies. So like in an education level, I don't see this happening in the near future, but like I think it's got to come from social media.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say about that. I agree with what he's saying to an extent, but here's the thing. I think that if you're going to get your information from TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is, it's more on you to pick one thing and stick with it
Mm-hmm.
than to be like, okay, I'm going to pick this from here. I'm going to do this type of diet and I'm going to like pick one, do it for 3 months. Does it work?
Yeah.
Yes. Great. No, stop, do something else. I think too many people, and I think this is just our society in 2023 as a whole, is like we're so impulsive that we want the new next best thing that we start something, we do it for 2 weeks, and we're like, this has been fun, but you know, I see this over here and that guy's jacked, so I'm gonna try that. I think it's more so people need to stick with something for a little bit longer time, and then they can decide whether or not it's good or shit.
Yeah, I
But
agree. I mean, I've like just the fact of like sticking with something. Like when I was training with Corey Gregory and doing his diet, like I got pretty shredded. And like looking back on it, that's very suboptimal. And there's better ways that have gotten me bigger and stronger. But I mean, I stuck with it and I did it and I bought in. So then to kind of like conclude what Eric said, he says it's frustrating, and you basically said this too. It's frustrating because it's hardwired in human nature to take advice from people they want to look like. He says, even for me, for example, I've put absolutely zero effort into the contents on my page. However, I think most of my followers follow me because in some regard they want to look like me. Essentially, what Eric does is just document all of his training, and he'll throw up some occasional physique updates. And
mhm,
that was like my initial thing when I was recommended to have Eric on the podcast. I was like, man, like I know he knows shit. I know he's smart. I know his form is fucking impeccable, dude. Like he looks like
right,
Justin Stockton in the gym, and he's like 6 something, low sixes, 195 pounds, shredded and jacked. So
right.
he says, I don't know if there's any way to circumvent that, or if it's just the way things will always be on these platforms. This is where it gets really hard, Eric. The way to circumvent that is to try to educate your audience. The thing
Yeah,
and you've experienced this too, Hunter. Instagram and people don't give a fuck about education. They will, the algorithm will carry an educational post that's like 30 seconds or longer, and it'll bury that shit because what people want to click for their dopamine release is someone that looks good, someone that's doing their thing, someone that's taking a selfie, someone that's fucking ripped. The very platform of which I've invested hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of my life, it's not conducive to teaching. It's like what's the Jesus quote? Teach a man to fish, can eat for a lifetime, or whatever. Like
Yeah.
Instagram is giving that fish, but they're not teaching people to fish. That's the fucked up part. So it's like, how do you fix it? I don't know. Maybe migrate your efforts. Like for me personally, I'm just gonna put a less priority on Instagram because I get like 200 views on something that could actually help someone. And then when I fucking post a selfie, I'll get like much more engagement. And that's just
Yeah.
the nature of the beast.
I think the good thing is we're starting to come to a point, at least from what I can see, that people are being able to kind of weed out some of the bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as bad, hopefully. I don't know. Um, but I mean, it's kind of like Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff, in a sense, is kind of like we're gonna, it's like if you are trying to date a girl, do you want to date the super, super, super hot girl who you have nothing in common with and she doesn't really like you, but she thinks you're okay? Or do you want to date the girl who's maybe not so hot? She's still attractive, but you guys have a lot in common. She likes your family. You guys can do all, like, it's just like you have to understand that what you're clicking on is going to keep coming back around. So if you're only clicking on the stuff that looks cool, but it has no value to you, then it's going to keep coming back around. Whereas if you click on the stuff that maybe isn't as sexy, maybe it's not, as mainstream, but it's actually got some value to it, that's what's going to stick around. And then, from there, you can start to, learn and continue to progress and share it with others and stuff like that. And who knows, maybe that then becomes mainstream. But right now, we're very stuck in a sense that everything we click on is quick, looks cool, it's gone in 15 seconds.
Yeah, dude. It's a cruel, cruel world out there.
You got that right.
Yeah, man. Well, I think it's just kind of on us, like Eric, you, me, people that care.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fucking selling out and going to a 9 to 5, so maybe less so me. No, I'm just kidding. I'll still be doing my thing. Yeah, I don't know if I've announced that yet on any social media, but I'm getting a 9 to 5, guys. If you're 76 minutes into this video, then appreciate you. But
Likewise.
it's a very man, the influencer shit, you just got to know that it's mostly for views, engagement, and marketing to sell and to make money rather than to actually help. So it's on us to try to still make money, still make a living, but provide good information because that is what will reward us with good longevity in your career. Think about all these people that in 10 years will be real estate agents instead of actually in the fitness industry that are content creators. So
Yeah, no. I mean, and that's one thing that I get so frustrated with. Like, I'll go in spurts. Is like 1 week I'll post 5 times, and then I won't post for 2 weeks. And it's just because it's like, damn, like I'm putting out all this good stuff. Nobody's biting on it. But, a big thing that I always kind of have to remind myself of is like, even if it only helps 4 or 5 people, that's 4 or 5 people that wouldn't have been helped by it. You just got to keep putting out that good stuff, and hopefully in the end it'll come back and help you a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way things are. But got to keep cranking.
yes, sir. That's what it all comes down to. Man, I feel like that's probably a good place to wrap it up. We got some great Olympia predictions going. Can't wait to see how those pan out. Some good questions. Especially we really appreciate the continued Are you going to start an OnlyFans? That one takes a cake, guys. So thank you so much for that. Keep it up.
Asking, maybe I'll do it.
Right. Probably. I'd say so. And yeah, I feel like that was a really good discussion on how we can kind of change the current status of fucked up stuff we see in the gym. So I'll say real quick, if you like the video, hit the subscribe button, like the video, share it around, follow the socials. I'm at DMart Training. Ring that notification bell too. Thank you, Hunter.
I
Better at
got
this
you.
than I am. And yeah, Hunter, plug anything you want to plug, dude.
Yeah, just my Instagram at Life of HL, and then yeah, if you are interested in coaching, you can always DM me through there. Yeah, always looking for new clients.
Yes, sir. Definitely. Appreciate you for coming on. This is what our third predictions and probably fourth chat in total on the podcast. So can't
I
wait
think
to
so.
pick up again. Hopefully next time I'm in Columbus, we'll get a session in or something like that. And yeah, man, I
Hmm.
appreciate you.
Yeah, only a couple more months to the Arnold.
Yes, sir. I'll be back for that most definitely. So thank you, Hunter. Thank you all for watching, and we will catch you in the next one.